Okay, so MIO Memories in Orbit just dropped literally yesterday on January 20th, and I've been absolutely glued to this game for the past day because it might be the most gorgeous Metroidvania I've ever played and also one of the hardest, and I need to talk about this. So here's the deal. This is from Deux Decimes, which is a small French indie studio who made Shady Part of Me a few years back, and they spent like 4 years building this entire game on their own custom engine, which is kind of insane. The game is $20 normally, but there's a 10% launch discount right now, so you can grab it for $18 on Steam, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and both Nintendo Switch and Switch 2. There's also a 2 to 3 hour demo that's still live if you want to try before you buy, which honestly, more games should do. You play as Mio, this tiny, nimble robot who wakes up on the vessel, which is this massive, abandoned Ark spaceship that's falling apart and overgrown with vegetation and broken machines. The AI caretakers, called Pearls, have all shut down, nobody knows why, and you have to explore this gigantic, interconnected labyrinth to revive the vessel's memories and figure out what happened. It's giving strong Hollow Knight and Ori vibes, but with its own unique identity, and honestly, the art style alone sold me immediately. Alright, so what actually works in this game? Because there is a lot to love here. First off, this might be the most visually stunning Metroidvania ever made, like I'm not even exaggerating. The art style is inspired by European comics and anime, and every single frame looks like a hand-painted work of art. The colors are vibrant and lush, the lighting is incredible, there are all these little details everywhere, like plants growing through machinery and robots wandering around doing their own thing, and it all feels alive in this beautiful, melancholic way. Multiple reviews specifically called it out as a visual masterpiece, and honestly, screenshots don't do it justice. You need to see it in motion. The Switch 2 version has 0 loading screens between areas, so the whole world feels seamless and interconnected, which is perfect for a Metroidvania. The soundtrack is also phenomenal. It blends lo-fi beats with choral melodies and it's super chill and atmospheric, but then boss fights ramp up with these dramatic vocal tracks that make the encounters feel epic. The movement system is incredibly satisfying once you get the hang of it. Mio starts with just a double jump and basic attack, but as you defeat bosses, you unlock new abilities like a grappling hook with your hair tendrils, wall and ceiling climbing like a spider, air gliding, and a perfectly timed dodge that lets you bounce off enemy projectiles to stay airborne. When you chain everything together, the platforming feels fluid and creative, and there are sections where you're just flying through the air, hitting crystals to recharge your double jump, grappling onto ledges, dodging through bullets, and it feels amazing. The combat is deceptively deep. You can only take a few hits before dying, so every encounter requires precision and timing. You have basic attacks, charged orb projectiles, the ability to create decoy clones to distract enemies, and the dodge with invincibility frames. Bosses are genuinely challenging with multiple phases and attack patterns you need to learn, and when you finally beat one after dying 20 times, the dopamine hit is real. There are over 30 enemy types and 15 bosses, so there's a ton of variety. The modifier system adds a lot of customization. You find and equip passive upgrades that boost your offense, defense, or utility, but they take up slots in your allocation matrix, and you don't have many slots early on, so you have to make tough choices about your build. The Nacre currency system creates this great risk-reward tension. Enemies drop Nacre, which you use for healing, upgrades, and progression, but if you die, you lose all the Nacre you're parrying unless you've crystallized it at specific machines scattered around the map. This means you're constantly making decisions about whether to push forward and explore or backtrack to safety and secure your resources. It's similar to the Souls games and Nine Souls, where death actually matters and feels consequential. The story is also really compelling if you're into existential sci-fi about consciousness and identity. You're piecing together what happened to the vessel through environmental storytelling and conversations with broken robots you help repair, and the writing is thoughtful and emotional without being heavy-handed. The game is 20 to 30 hours long for a full playthrough, which is substantial for the price.
But okay, let's talk about the problems, because this game is not for everyone and has some serious rough edges, especially in the early hours. The biggest issue is that the opening is brutally difficult and poorly paced. You start with almost no abilities, very limited health, no clear objective of where to go, and enemies hit really hard. Multiple reviews specifically called out the first few hours as brutal and frustrating. You're lost in this massive, interconnected world with minimal guidance, and the map system makes it worse. You can only view your map when you're plugged into specific terminals scattered around the vessel. The rest of the time, you're navigating from memory, which sounds cool in theory, but in practice, it means you're constantly getting turned around and backtracking through areas you've already been to because you forgot which way to go. The game wants you to explore organically and discover things on your own, but especially early on when you don't have movement abilities unlocked, it can feel aimless and directionless. Resource management in the opening hours is also super punishing. You have limited health, healing costs Nacre, upgrades cost Nacre, and if you die, you lose everything you haven't crystallized. This creates situations where you explore for an hour, accumulate a bunch of Nacre, then die to a tough enemy or boss and lose all your progress, which feels terrible. One reviewer said the Nacre loss became a hindrance to the fun, snappy nature of Metroidvanias they usually enjoy. You also start with very limited modifier slots, so you can't even equip many upgrades. Like your health bar display takes up 5 points out of your 20 available points early on, which is absurd. The modifier slot that shows enemy health isn't even equipped by default, so you're fighting bosses with no idea how much damage you're doing unless you waste precious slots on UI elements. The bosses are genuinely hard, like Hollow Knight hard. They have rapid-fire, chaotic attack patterns that cycle randomly, require instant recognition and reaction to avoid, and most have second phases where everything gets faster and more complex. If you're not good at split-second action, these boss fights will be brick walls that stop your progress for hours. Multiple reviews warned that if you enjoy Metroidvanias for exploration and discovery, but aren't great at intense combat, you're gonna struggle. The difficulty overall is very polarizing. Some people love the challenge and think it makes victories feel earned. Other people find it frustrating and unfair, especially combined with the limited map access and resource scarcity. There's also some weirdness around the game's engine. The devs built their own proprietary engine from scratch, which is ambitious, but one Steam user was confused because the EULA mentions Unreal Engine, and they were asking why use Unreal for a 2D side-scroller when it's known for being ugly and poorly performing. Not clear if that's accurate or just a boilerplate EULA issue, but it raised some questions. Performance seems mostly solid, but I haven't seen enough long-term feedback to know if there are major bugs or crashes yet, since the game literally just launched yesterday. So, fun or refund? Is MIO Memories in Orbit worth $20 or $18 with the launch discount? Honestly, this is a tough one because the game is absolutely brilliant in some ways, but also aggressively difficult and potentially frustrating in others. If you loved Hollow Knight, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, or Nine Souls, and you're specifically looking for a challenging Metroidvania with stunning visuals and deep mechanics, then this is an easy recommendation. The art and sound design alone are worth the price of admission, and when the combat and platforming click, it's some of the most satisfying gameplay in the genre. For $18, you're getting 20 to 30 hours of gorgeous handcrafted content, and that's a steal. But if you get frustrated by difficult games, if you hate feeling lost without clear objectives, if you don't like punishing resource management and losing progress when you die, then honestly, wait for a sale or skip it entirely. The opening hours in particular are brutal, and if you can't push through that initial difficulty spike, you're not going to have a good time. Also, try the demo first. It's free and gives you 2 to 3 hours of gameplay so you can see if the difficulty and exploration style work for you before committing. The demo apparently has accessibility options to tweak difficulty if you're struggling, so that might help. For me personally, I'm giving this a fun with major caveats. This is one of the most beautiful games I've played in years. The movement and combat feel incredible once you unlock abilities. The world is fascinating to explore, and the challenge is satisfying when you overcome it. But the rough opening, limited map access, and punishing resource management will absolutely turn some people off. If you're into hard Metroidvanias and you can tolerate some friction early on, you're gonna love this. If you want something more accessible and forgiving, there are better options out there. Either way, play the demo first. It's literally free and will tell you everything you need to know about whether this game is for you. Just know what you're getting into. This is a tough, deliberate experience that doesn't hold your hand and expects you to earn every victory. If that sounds appealing, grab it. If not, wait for more patches or a deeper sale.